Tokinahkumi. It's a sensitive namskan connects mitics. Tumachtutu anum amskapi pikani. Pisitiski umaxiki koi. Kitokinet sematsinokpua. Kitsematsinokpua. I welcome you all with a warm handshake in the language of the first people who first knew these stars, skies, and landscape and waters. The Blackfeet of northwestern Montana, our ancestral homeland, the place that my grandmothers would call the Valley of the Flowers. And so we are very excited to honor some of our best and brightest tonight. Welcome you to join me in welcoming Astronaut John Herrington to the stage, who is going to not only present the award along with a very honored guest, but then also we'll have a chance to hear a little bit about his story, and Amanda will have an opportunity to share a few of her thank yous and brief remarks. Before we get started though, I do want to acknowledge some members of our administration in the room, without whom this would not be possible. Dean Lee, would you please stand and be recognized? And can we please all give a round of applause for those of you who have not yet seen or read the announcement. It's with a heavy heart that we thank you with the deepest sense of gratitude for all the lives that you've impacted when what I know that you consider to be your highest honor in serving the Honors College. With Dean Lee retiring within the next month, thank you for bringing me home and for bringing all this into motion.
Thank you, Steve.
Jeff Hayes, would you please be recognized? Dean Hayes is Associate Dean in Engineering, a trusted advisor, mentor, and guide for me, and he faithfully led the Honors College last year during Dean Lee's leave of absence. And one other honored guest that I'd like to acknowledge, without whom I know we would not be celebrating the same extent of accomplishments, because we know that with every success story, there's an incredible mentor, faculty, researcher behind the scenes. Dr. Matthew Fields, I want to acknowledge your contributions to this evening, and thank you very much for the support, not just of Amanda, but for all of our students here at Montana State. And without further ado, I have the honor and privilege of welcoming to the stage Commander John Herrington, who will be leading us through this evening's festivities.
Good evening, everybody. That's my honor and privilege. Thank you for having us down here. It's a nice drive. I live in, my wife Danielle with me, in Marion, Montana. And it's a nice, beautiful drive coming down here. I was going to fly, but as we said, it's a challenge to fly through the mountains of Montana sometimes in a small plane and doing the right thing and getting here safely and stuff. But it's my honor. The Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, I made a comment earlier that probably the very first time I gave a speech, I read a speech, and they told me to speak from the heart. I'm going to do my very best. I want to talk about what the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation is. It was founded in 1984 by the original 7 Mercury astronauts. One had passed away, that was Gus Grissom, but his wife Betty was there. And the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation has really recognizes a lot of folks, very, very talented folks in the STEM fields. But I want to read it because I don't want to miss something in the talking points. And since I'm 65, we're going to get my glasses on here. I said it was founded in 1984 by the original 7 Mercury astronauts. Their goal was to ensure that the United States would continue to be the global leader in science, technology, engineering, and math. And since 1984, astronauts from the Gemini, Apollo, Skylab, Space Shuttle, and the International Space Station program have also embraced their mission. The Astronaut Scholarship Foundation partners with industry, universities, individual donors to identify the best and the brightest university students pursuing STEM degrees and to award those students with scholarships. The Astronaut Scholarship is known nationwide as being among the largest merit-based monetary scholarship awarded to undergraduate, juniors, and seniors. The Astronaut Scholarship Foundation has awarded more than 700 scholars with scholarships totaling more than $8 million. However, the scholarships are not solely monetary in nature. ASF maintains a lifelong relationship with each astronaut scholar and provides them with mentors, opportunities for personal and professional development, and chances to connect with astronauts, executives, and industry leaders. But before we introduce this year's Astronaut Scholar, I'd like to thank Joanne Morgan, and I'd like Joanne, if she could, to come up to me, and I want to introduce you, if you don't mind. Joanne's a special, wonderful, I met Joanne about 2 or 3 years ago now in Big Fork, Montana. Joanne was the first female engineer at Kennedy Space Center.
Oh my gosh.
And the only female in the firing room at the Launch Control Center. If you ever watch the movies about the Apollo program, they always pan the room, all these guys in white shirts and ties, and they end up on Joanne. And she became the most senior executive, the highest senior executive for a female at the Kennedy Space Center. She had a 40-year career and retired in 2003, I think it was. But she's a dear friend. We live close by, and I got a chance to meet her. And the neat thing about it is, for me as an astronaut, growing up and watching the Apollo program, these folks are my heroes. And to be able to be in the company of folks that made that possible. So a lot of folks I worked with in my career that wanted to become astronauts were watching the folks that were taking us to the moon. So, and Joanne is one of those. Thank you so much. I'd like to here to Amanda. We'll get here. So I'm going to play a video really quick. Make sure I can bring it up here. And that'll talk about the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, and we'll continue from there. I probably pulled you up here too.
If I had to sum up the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation in one word,
I'd say family.
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 Family 100%.
Yep, we're one giant family of innovators, explorers, and dreamers.
We have found our people, and we have each other's back.
Like a loving family.
a multi-generational family.
We do everything possible to help each other succeed.
And not just a one-time help. We're there every step of the way.
365 days a year.
Why? Because that's what successful families do.
And do you want to hear some good news?
Our successful family is growing.
Our family began in 1984. A group of astronauts, the Mercury 7, had an out-of-this-world idea.
To build a family of explorers.
Young and old.
Coming together to share a passion of discovery.
Pretty cool, right? So, they sought out some of the brightest young minds on university campuses.
And treated those talented students like family.
They gave them tools,
contacts,
opportunities,
whatever they needed to carry on the legacy of discovery.
And make our unique mark on the world.
And year after year,
this family grew.
And now it is destined to live on for generations.
Johns Hopkins University,
Utah State University,
University of Virginia,
Miami University,
Florida Institute of Technology,
Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University,
the University of Michigan.
Hi, I'm Bernard Harris. I believe that Mercury 7 formed the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation because they believed in the future of space. And ASF's mission is important because it prepares students for that future.
This family has made its mark over the last 39 years.
We've awarded more than $8 million to nearly 800 college students coast to coast.
innovators, explorers, and even entrepreneurs.
Pursuing a wide range of STEM degrees.
At 46 of our nation's best universities.
With a total of 1,001 bachelor degrees,
270 master's degrees,
306 doctoral degrees,
2,448 technical papers published,
and 161 patents.
But family is only as strong as its surrounding village.
And that's where we tip our hats to you.
Our community of donors and supporters.
Your unwavering support is at the heart of everything we do. You make it possible for our impact
to keep growing and thriving.
And that makes you
one of the most important members of our family.
Together, we're changing lives.
So here's to ASF.
An extraordinary family.
Propelling innovation
for a brighter tomorrow.
To the Astronaut Scholars of 2023, welcome to the family.
Welcome to the family.
Welcome to the ASF family.
Beautiful. I'd like to introduce the folks as well. The Astronaut Scholarship Foundation Program Director is here as well, so thank you for being here. I'd also like to mention that Joanne, through your Stanford alumni for your at the university, was responsible for the funding for this scholarship as well. So she brought that information. Without further ado, I'll make sure to do the right thing here. So I'd like to bring up our 2023 Montana State University Astronaut Scholar, Amanda Haab. Will you please come to the front? Joanne?
Oh my goodness.
Congratulations, this is a fabulous accomplishment. Thank you so much for being here.
I have so many people, I had to write them down. I don't remember what to say. Okay, so one of the cons of being the first astronaut scholar at Montana State is they don't tell you what kind of speech to write and you haven't seen it go down before. So this is my first time doing it. I also didn't know what to wear, but I think we did good. I want to thank my community who's continually supported me, my family, my friends, my advisors, Dean Lee, Matthew, Liz, Matthew Fields, Dr. Hayes, and so many more people who have decided that I was worth investing in and had faith in my curiosity, and I'm so thankful for them. My advice to future scholars in the room would be to look around the world, don't stop wondering, and be passionate. It's what makes the world beautiful. In addition, bring and invest in others as ASF has invested in me, to be curious about the future. Thank you so much.
One of the things back, I think back when I was a junior at the University of Colorado Springs, I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was very fortunate. I'll tell the story. It's a pretty interesting story. But it was about people I met along the way that encouraged me and motivated me and pointed me in a direction I didn't necessarily think I was going at the time. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I know that the people, your faculty members, I actually lived with the head of the math department when I was a senior, and he gave me a student to tutor, and I'll tell you about that student a little bit. But what the faculty does for us allows us to work in the community. I was a tutor and a grader for the math department, and they fundamentally changed my life. And so I can see that here at this university as well. So what I like to do is, if you don't mind, I like to share kind of my journey to become an astronaut. And if I can put my glasses on and figure out how to get back here, we'll tell a fun story. You can see it here. See if it pops up. I know that guy. Here we go. Boom. The little guy is me. I used to sit in a cardboard box and dream I was going to the moon when I was 8 years old. I never thought I'd have a chance to do that. Let me turn this guy on. Here we go. My brother's standing next to me, but I took him out of the picture. The guy in the suit weighs 300 pounds. They make you sit in a chair while they take your photo. I signed that for a young man one day, and he goes, "That's not you. That guy's really young." Yeah, so here we are. There's me. So there's a little bit older guy. That's about 10 years ago. And now my Danielle and I and our dog Emmy, it's a sled dog. We live outside of Marion, Montana. It's outside of Kalispell, little runway called Cabin Creek Landing. I'm the airport manager, and I get to drive the snowplow. So interesting life that you lead after you leave the astronaut office. Well, I was told this. Gravity, when you go to space, gravity does not tell you which way is down, right? Because you're in this free fall around the Earth. It takes 90 minutes to go around the Earth in the space shuttle. And so as gravity pulls the vehicle back, the Earth falls away. So you're in this constant free fall. Now gravity's still there, you just can't feel it. And so rather than gravity telling which way is down, is what your eyes see. And I was told that sometime in your spacewalk, something will happen and your mind will flip you upside down instantaneously. So I'm actually upside down in that photo, you know, relative to the space station and the Earth. The Earth was actually above me, but I was crawling from one side of the space station to the other, and I was looking at my hands, I was looking up, and instantaneously I was looking down. My mind went, whoop, and I'm like, wait a minute, I was looking up a second ago. And so you start looking at the surroundings, and it takes you back into what your eyes were telling you is right side up. The neat thing is when you go to a work site on the space station that you've trained for 1.5 or 2 years in a swimming pool in Houston, Texas, when you go upside down, all the blood's being pulled to your head and your shoulders are crammed in the suit, and you're neutrally buoyant, but you weigh something, so it's very, very uncomfortable. In space, it's not upside down anymore. You can go out to that work site and go, I'm right side up, and it feels just like you are. That's a fabulous thing. Let's see, I found out that I have a photo of that. I actually raised my visor. I didn't think I had any photos of myself except one in space with my visor up, but I was going through some old NASA archives and I found a photo about a week ago that has that same spot with my visor up, but I apologize, it's not in this slideshow. We had an astronaut who would come in for about 1.5 years. We trained in the Astronaut Office. We learned about NASA, we learned about budget programs, the space station, space shuttle, and one of the astronauts came in one day and wrote a really large number on the board, and he said in the history of the human race, we estimate about 108 billion people have lived on the surface of the Earth. Right? He wrote a much smaller number. As of today, because there was a launch last week with Tracy Caldwell, she's in the office with me, 648 of us have had the privilege of flying in space. He said, never forget how fortunate you are to do something that so very few people have ever done. And it's your responsibility to share that story with others. So this is, it's not reading speech, this is coming from the heart. I love telling that story. Out of the 648, 268 of us have actually stepped outside and done a spacewalk, right? And 12 people actually walked on the surface of the moon. I was kind of curious, I'm the 143rd person in the history of the world, woohoo, to get to do a spacewalk. But a lot of folks will say, John, what's it like on the moon? I didn't go to the moon. You know, I was 14 years old the last time somebody went to the moon. You were 14 when you went to the moon? No. You know, in the history of the human race, 24 people have left this planet, and of the 24, 12 of them have worked on the surface of the moon. When I was a kid, I used to sit and watch these folks fly to the moon. And one of those gentlemen was Thomas Stafford. And Thomas Stafford just passed away about 2 weeks ago. He's a native Oklahoman, Weatherford, Oklahoma. And when I retired from NASA and I came back to Oklahoma to work for a commercial space company, I got to meet General Tom Stafford because he would invite me to these events. And I got to meet the people that I used to watch as a kid. And then General Stafford introduced me to all these other Apollo folks along the way. And the guy that sat across the table from me in my interview, Captain John Young, had been the commander of Apollo 16, and asked me why I wanted to work for him. That's a pretty neat thing. Never imagined that little kid, an eight-year-old kid in a cardboard box would have a chance to work with the people who were his heroes. My journey started in Oklahoma. I'm a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation, Chickasaw. So Chafoet, my name is John Herrington. In the Chickasaw language, Chickasaw Shanampali, I would be Chickasaw Abanoa, because it's a descriptive language. So what's an astronaut do? Well, they decided an astronaut walks above. So I'm the Chickasaw above walker, Chickasaw Abanoa. This is my great-grandma on my mom's side, the Chickasaw family. That's my grandpa, that is my brother, and the little guy's me. This is Indian housing in Ada, Oklahoma. I'm very proud of my heritage. My granny spoke the language fluently, but wouldn't speak it to anybody except people her own age, for whatever reason. I'm learning it now as I've gotten older. A lot of things I wish I'd learned early on, it just didn't happen. We moved away when I was about a year old. My folks, we moved about 14 times by the time I got out of college, or out of high school actually. We loved air shows. My mom and dad both learned how to fly. And my dad actually was an instructor, and he had a little Cessna 150, and I get to fly with my dad, and he'd give me the airplane and open the window and take pictures leaning over me. I never thought I'd get a pilot's license. My dad sold a plane when I was 16, so I didn't have a chance to get my pilot's license. Earned it much later as a naval aviator. We used to shoot those model rockets, Estes rockets, right? There's little payloads on the top of those things. Some of them are clear. This is in Colorado. I used to pick these little black beetles out of the grass, and I'd put them in the payload. Right? I wasn't being mean. I was being a scientist. I graduated from high school in 1976, Plano High School. We moved a whole bunch of times. I ended up in Plano. Graduated. My folks actually lived in Colorado. So I moved back to Colorado, and I went to school with the notion of being a forest ranger. You know, I like being outdoors. I kind of pretty much spent most of my childhood living in the mountains, Colorado, Wyoming. But I never talked to a forest ranger. I just thought, that's what I want to do. I want to go outside. So I started off University of Colorado Springs. I was working in a restaurant called the Sunbird. I was working there kind of part-time to full-time because I was paying for my education. I was doing work-study Pell Grants. And I would go out to a place called Garden of the Gods. And you change a little bit when you go to college. You can see that one. Long hair. I was out at the Garden of the Gods one day, and these two guys were rock climbing. And this one guy leans over and says, "Hey, you want to learn to rock climb?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to learn to rock climb." So I started rock climbing. Kind of quit studying. Had a 1.72 grade point at the end of my second semester and a suspension from the University of Colorado because I was going to school part-time. I didn't realize as a part-time student, if you had less than 2.0, you were kicked out. And you know, I was not motivated in the classroom. You know, my motivation was outside. My motivation was climbing. I enjoyed that thrill. I enjoyed the physicality of it, the mental aspect of it. And I was working in the restaurant still. They sent me to Texas, away from the rocks, to work in a restaurant to become a chef. So I drove to Texas, Fort Worth, Texas. I was there for most of that summer, and I hated it. I hated my job. I hated, you know, going to work at 2 in the afternoon, working until 11, 12, staying up and partying until 3, 4 in the morning, doing it over again. Called a friend of mine in Colorado that I worked with in a restaurant, and I was just lonely. He said, "Hey, I've been looking for you." So I called you. No. And he said, you want a job? And I said, "Doing what?" He said, "Rock climbing." I said, "Really? Serious, rock climbing?" He said, "Yeah, we have a survey crew, and any people know how to use ropes. And you know how to climb, so hey, do you want to come up here?" So I called my dad. I said, "Hey, I got this neat job opportunity." He goes, "Great, don't quit. You got a good job." So I was Thursday, I quit on Friday. Ended up in this is Interstate 70 in Glenwood Canyon, Colorado, in Colorado. This is Interstate 70. This is the highway we actually ended up building. This is the Colorado River. My job was to hang off these cliffs as a climber and hold a piece of glass against the rock. And the glass is called a prism. And they would shoot a beam of light to the prism I held in my hand. Well, how's that work? Well, light travels at constant velocity. You know, if you know the time it took, you can determine the distance. If you know the angle of that beam of light, sine, cosine. So I was learning trigonometry for the first time in my life on the side of a cliff. I got paid $4 an hour. I got the company truck on the weekends, and I was really close to Snowmass and Aspen, and I go skiing. And I thought, this is great. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And a guy I worked for, a guy named John Haley, owned a company called Nelson Haley Patterson Cork, and he was the engineer responsible for all that. And I was sitting in a bar that night, wasn't drinking, I was working. I was grommeting a sheet that we were going to pull across the Colorado River because the environmentalists wanted to see where the highway was going to go. And so I'm sitting here with these grommets and I'm putting this thing together. And this older gentleman comes in, sits down next to me with a cigar and a Tanqueray and tonic. I kid you not. And he said, "Yeah, what are you going to do when you grow up?" "I want to do this." He said, "Well, why don't you go back to school and become the engineer and be the one responsible for this. Don't be the one on the lowest rung of the ladder. You know, when you're 25 or 30, $4 an hour is not going to cut it. You can't raise a family doing that." So I worked for him the rest of the year. I reapplied to the university. They let me back in. And I had a great circle of friends. I started off at the university not having friends. I didn't know anybody. By the second time around, I had a motivation to study. I had a great group of folks to study with. And by the time I was a senior, I worked for the math department. And the gentleman I worked for gave me a student who was a retired Navy captain who flew Dauntless dive bombers in World War II. And I was his calculus tutor, and he was my Navy tutor. And so he said, "Go see that movie, Officer and a Gentleman." I date myself, but you know, go see that movie, Officer and Gentleman. If you want a college graduate, go through Officer Candidate School, get yelled at by a Marine. Thank you, Marines. I'll tell you my fun Marine story. And I loved it. I thought it was great. So I went to the university, went to Aviation Officer Candidate School. They cut all my hair off. The tutelage of a Marine drill instructor, Gunnery Sergeant Hawks, United States Marine Corps, fundamentally changed my perspective. I never thought I'd join the military, but I never met anybody in the military. And I thrived. I thoroughly enjoyed it. By the time I graduated, I went on to fly P-3 Orions, my wings of gold. I hunted Russian subs for about 4 years in the Pacific. I chased Thai pirates in the South China Sea. I chased Russian submarines off of Cam Bay and off the coast of Vietnam. But all my friends went to work for the airlines at the end of my first tour. And I thought, that dream I had as a kid is to be an astronaut. If I go to United Airlines, that ain't gonna happen. If I stay in the Navy and I apply to test pilot school and I get an advanced degree, then there's a possibility. And so I did. I stayed in, went to test pilot school in P3, big airplane. Went to the test pilot school, Pax River, Maryland. Great group of folks. We had folks from all around the world in that class. And you learn how to really fly airplanes and the mathematics that goes with it. All the second order differential equations and how you can describe the motion of an airplane and tell the engineer what he did wrong. That's just great fun. I went on to get a master's degree in aeronautical engineering to be competitive, to be an astronaut. Earned a master's in aeronautical engineering, avionics, kind of a aero electrical engineering degree. I applied twice and got selected to the 16th group of astronauts. In 1996, I'm up in the corner here. 35 US, 9 international, 2 bald-headed guys right here, Mark and Scott Kelly. Scott was on the station for about a year. His brother is a senator in Arizona now. Just a fabulous, fabulous group of folks. We were nicknamed the Sardines because they usually pick about 10 to 15 in the class. So I got to work. I had a plaque on my name tag that said Sardines. I drew that cartoon, that's mine. For sardines, space is no problem. Had the best job in the office, flew the front seat of the jet, but I got a chance to walk in space. Excuse me. They don't let the pilots walk in space because they're essential crew, and they have to put the gear down. So, real quick, I'm the crew artist. I came up with the patch design. The 4 of us, Jim Weatherby, Paul Lockhart, myself, Mike Gallet. Excuse me. We took 3 people to space, brought 3 people home. We installed a large truss on the outside. CXIII 113 was our mission number. The commander said it spelled the word sexy. Okay. There's actually 6 people in this photo because the suits Mike and I are wearing weigh about 300 pounds apiece, and they don't want you to get hurt, so they put a guy behind you to hold you up. The gentleman with the high and tight right here was Gus Loria. He's a Marine aviator. He had a medical issue, couldn't fly with us, but a great gentleman. And I love the look on the commander's face at the rookie right here. Off the launch pad in November of 2002, about 7 million pounds of thrust, giving you a good kick in the pants. Takes 8.5 minutes to get to orbit. You go up and around the Earth, about here the engines quit. The last minute of flight, you weigh about 3 times your normal body weight. You go from 3 Gs to 0 Gs instantaneously when the engines quit. And it wasn't looking out the window that was my OG whiz moment being in space. It was letting go of my checklist and watching it float and hover in front of me on a tether, you know. And then you take your seatbelt off and now you're floating. And you've never had to do this before. And you've got a job to do. So you got one hand's holding the checklist, one hand's holding on, you realize you've just run out of hands. Right? So you Velcro the checklist to the wall. There's some stirrups that we tape down on the floor. And you don't fear dying as an astronaut, you fear making a mistake. And so you do everything as deliberately and carefully as possible. You were in New Zealand recently, right? This is Cook Strait right here. James Cook sailed the HMS Endeavour through that strait back in the 1700s. Our spaceship is named after his sailing ship. We were docked to space station. Well, they took this photo of us, right? We took a photo of them. We docked right up here and we installed a piece just like this. These are cooling radiators. This runs about 99.9% pure ammonia. That's how you cool the space station. It transfers the heat from the water to the ammonia and then it radiates into space right here. So we installed one on this side, P1, P for port. We did it with straight 3 spacewalks, about 20 hours in the suit outside. Every spacewalk was about 7 hours. You only have a bag of water to drink. It's a little bite valve right here. If you've ever been in an airplane or if you've been in a pool, when your ears get the squeeze in your ears, so you grab your nose and you Valsalva to equalize that pressure, right? You can't do it in that suit. The suit goes down to about 4.3 pounds per square inch of pressure. And as the pressure change occurs, you can't grab your nose. And so there's a little teeny foam rubber cushion here you put your nose on and you close your mouth and you can do the same thing. Well, I didn't realize I could blow air out of tear duct in my eye. And since all the liquid in my body was floating, all the liquid in my sinuses was floating, it goes, and it comes out and it sticks to the inside of my helmet. Like 3 little splotches of stuff. And Mike was over here laughing at me. And I'm like, well, what do you do, you know? Do you call Houston and say, you know, Houston, EV2, go ahead. Yeah, I have eye goobers in my helmet. You know, if I did that, if I had done that, they would have a difficult time with that. They would make me depressurize the suit, take the helmet off, clean it off, put an anti-fog on it, put it back on, repressurize. Now I've probably lost maybe 30 minutes of my timeline. And they tell you over and over and over again, don't get out late. Don't get out late, because there's a piece of hardware with your name on it. The longer it stays out there, the colder or hotter it gets until you get it connected up. So rather than tell NASA that I had eye goobers in my helmet, what do a highly trained professional do? And the Russian goes, John, don't do that, you fog helmet. And sure enough, first spacewalk, walked outside, and but the neat thing about that helmet, the air comes across the back of your head and goes across the top and down, and it defogs. And I didn't get sick. I got out on time. Yeah, very fun. Great shot. Mike took this. Beautiful view of the Endeavour. These are our star trackers right here. My safety tether is about 55 feet long. If you let it go and float away, if you push away, you'll float about 55 feet away, and it'll slowly reel you back in. If it breaks, there's a jetpack on my back to fly me back to the space station. My mom said, don't let go. And if you do let go, make sure you're tethered. So you got a lot of tethers here to hook these handrails. This is what I thought was the only photo of me with my visor up. It's hard to see it, but I'm holding on to a 1,000-pound cart with both hands. There's mass, weight equals W equals mg. The mass is still there. The G's gone away because it's 0, right? So it weighs nothing, but it still has mass. And so as my feet move away and they're driving the robotic arm, that stays there. And now I have to pull it with me. And I rode the robotic arm for about 30 minutes from one side of the space station to the other, holding on to 1,000 pounds, and then got to put it back on the space station. That was pretty. I kept thinking, please don't stop. You don't want to be down at the very end and outside and have to shimmy back down the robotic arm. Let's see here. It's a pair of pliers. It swaps its axis of rotation due to instability. It'll do that down here, but it keeps falling to the ground, right? It's a bag of pistachios my kids gave me. Wasn't very good at eating them. It's my classmate, Peggy Whitson. It was the first female commander of Space Station. This is an orange drink. It's not Tang. You're not supposed to endorse a product as an astronaut, right? So you use orange drink, and the property of liquid surface tension causes it to form into a ball in space. You can push it around with dental floss. Commander said, don't let it hit the equipment. Be very careful. Paul was not keen on, there we go. Highly trained professionals. This is a chain my commander had around his neck, and Valery, one of Russia, a cosmonaut, said, put it in a ball of water, watch what it does. It adheres to the outside of the ball of water. We slept in sleeping bags. Try to think what it's like to sleep for the first time not touching anything. It's really kind of weird. Every time you close your eyes, you see these little flashes of light, these high energy particles kick off a photon in your field of view with your eyes closed. Paul slept on the ceiling. I don't know if I have the next one. No, I don't. Here we go. We undocked from space station. We installed this truss right here. This was in 2002. This is what it looks like now. 16 countries have been involved in the manufacture and assembly of the space station. The first time the majority of those components went together was in the vacuum space, and it's worked really well. P1 truss right here, S1 truss. This one's failed twice. This one still works, yay. Japanese module, European, Russian stuff. There's a European module back here. And one of the neat things we learned, it launched in 1998, the first element. The first crew went on board in November of 2000. We've had people on board the space station every minute of every day since November of 2000. And it'll probably they say fly for another 10 years. They're looking at using commercial elements to come up. Tom Jones, just another astronaut, had a really interesting idea that we should spend the money to be able to boost it to an altitude high enough that it'll never re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. Otherwise, in about 10 years, we have to put something on it to slow it down so it deorbits and crashes into the Pacific Ocean, the Southern Pacific Ocean. Multi-billion-dollar investment. I think it'd be nice to be able to see it somewhere up there and eventually bring it back down in a way that we could actually use it again. But we'll see. One of the interesting things that's happened is eyesight. Folks go up at 20/20, come back with 2200. Not everybody, some folks. And they believe that pressure shift that occurs in weightlessness, that fluid shift that occurs and impinges on the back of the eye and shortens the focal length and the optic nerve. And they're looking at different ways. How do you countermeasure that? You can countermeasure your heart getting weaker by doing exercise. You can countermeasure your bones getting weaker by doing resistive exercise. but how do you countermeasure your eyes changing? So it's a fundamental if we're going to go to Mars, and you want to be able to obviously have good eyesight when you get there. I flew 2 things to honor my heritage as a Native American. Were given to me by a gentleman named Phil Lane Sr. The feather, eagle feather, was beaded Mother Earth and Father Sky. And the flute was made by a Cherokee friend who was an engineer at the Kennedy Space Center. He used this math to determine where each of the holes goes based on the length and diameter of that flute. And also there was a pot. This is a Hopi potter friend of mine named Al Koyawema, traditional Hopi potter, but he also is a aeronautical engineer, and he has a patent on the X-15 or inertial navigation system. And he's one of the founders of the American Indian Science and Engineering Society. He flew a little teeny pot like that on my mission with cornmeal, and they're now both in the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. So pretty nice display. Walk right out, and my mom went there once, and they had taken it back in storage, and she couldn't find it. She wasn't happy, but it's back out now. Any idea on the Earth where that is? It's China up here, okay? That's Seoul, South Korea. Huh, what's that? That's Pyongyang, North Korea. Something's not happening in North Korea, and you can see it from space. There's really very few places where you actually see the demarcation between countries in orbit. At night, it's pretty obvious North and South Korea. The Dominican Republic's another one between Haiti and Dominican Republic. A lot of deforestation down there as well. A little close to where I live, this is looking from about from Colorado out to the west coast. So right here would be Salt Lake City, the Bonneville Salt Flats. Head down to the south, that would be Phoenix. Down I-15, that little town where what happens there stays there. You out here, if you get wet, you've gone too far, that's Los Angeles. Run up the San Joaquin Valley to San Francisco. Keep all the way up I-5, all the way up here to Portland. Portland's right there. This would be Boise, Idaho, right there. I live up here in the mountains of northwestern Montana. A little closer to home here. Have you ever seen this photo before? It's been published in the paper here. You're in this photo, so hopefully you've seen it. That right there is Kalispell. You run down to Missoula, right there. Pop way out here, it's Great Falls. Oops, no, Great Falls way up there, I'm sorry. That's Helena, right there. I still get confused. That would be Butte. There's, what's that, Four Corners right there? So that'd be Bozeman right there. So we are here. Yay! You wave, you're in the photo. It's neat. I felt really insignificant looking back, being an astronaut and looking at the very macro view of the world, and I felt really insignificant. Coming back on a space shuttle, that's what books do in 0G. We were gone for about 2 weeks, just shy of 14 days. Landed at the Kennedy Space Center. I've never felt so heavy. I couldn't stand up. I think I was dehydrated. You get dehydrated because your body thinks you have too much liquid, so you urinate a lot of that liquid away. So when you come home, you have to drink salty beverages, take salt tablets, drink water, so you absorb the water. I drank my protocol. I was actually the bartender. I had the bag underneath my seat. There were 3 of us on the flight deck, and I would pass out they would float the bags to the commander and the pilot, and they would eventually they would quit floating. They started to fall down as we got back in the atmosphere. It took about a week to get used to being back on the Earth. I would lay in bed at night, and I swear that was a floor, because it was. I'd bump into walls when I walked around the corner. I was training for a space station. The mission after mine was Columbia. I lost several friends on Columbia. 3 were my classmates. We were going to fly for about 2.5 years. I got assigned as a space station commander with 2 Russians. But I was in Russia. I was living in Moscow, Idaho. I lived there too. Moscow. And was diagnosed with osteoporosis and got disqualified from long duration. Came back to the office, but we weren't flying the shuttle. And I got offered an opportunity to fly with a company called Rocket Plane and build a vehicle where I would be the test pilot. And maybe fly in space twice a week instead of once every 5 years. And I knew if I didn't do it, I'd regret it if it was successful. We won an agreement called the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services Agreement. 2 companies won that agreement. One was called Rocket Plane Kistler, that was called SpaceX. You heard of SpaceX, right? Yeah. Rocket Plane Kistler, anybody? We were owned by a millionaire, not a billionaire. We didn't have the $400 million that NASA required us to match what they were going to give us. And so they terminated us in the summer of, late fall of 2007. And I decided that I needed to do something else with my life because I had left a really remarkable job and this one didn't pan out. So I got on a bicycle. I convinced my tribe, my chief, my chair, my governor, here in Oklahoma that he sponsored me to ride from Cape Flattery, Washington to Cape Canaveral, Florida, and stop at Indian reservations and NASA schools across the country and tell my story and try and see if it kind of motivate. The idea of what motivates a student to learn math and science. Certainly Native kids. I stopped here at a place called Lewiston, Idaho. I spoke at the University of Idaho, and a gentleman said, if you want to get a PhD, come back and talk to me. Well, I didn't live in Idaho. The woman I met here, I ended up proposed to down here in Florida, and I moved to Idaho. And I went back to school and did a PhD in education. Unfortunately, my late wife passed away about 6 years ago from cancer, but she was an author, and she encouraged me to write a children's book. So we wrote it's called Rocket Trek. Wrote a children's book called Mission to Space. My tribe publishes it. It's got a Chickasaw to English vocabulary in the back to match the words that are in it. And then as life would have it, neat things happen to you. I was invited to speak at the National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. about 2 years ago, in November, dedication of the Native American Veterans Memorial that a friend of mine named Harvey Pratt was a designer of. And the woman that was the organizer of that event was the Associate Director for Advancement for the Smithsonian. I kind of took a liking to. And Danielle is right here. We got married this past July near my home, our home in Montana, up here in Montana, a place called Lost Trail Wildlife Refuge. So life has its ups and downs, you know, and I'm very blessed to have met this wonderful woman. So thank you for being here. That's that part of that story. Let's see, what else we have here? So working. Yeah, a few years ago, I was invited to be in an IMAX movie with a young lady named Ariel Tweedo. You ever seen the TV show Flying Wild Alaska? Yeah, that was her family. And Ariel, unfortunately, her father just passed away this year in a plane crash. Wonderful young lady. We traveled across the country with the folks that made an IMAX movie called Into America's Wild. The idea, we met some remarkable people across the country in the process of doing that. This young lady right here, Jennifer Farr Davis, holds the record for hiking the Appalachian Trail for man or woman. Did it in 48 days. Remarkable, phenomenal book. Yeah, Durango Silverton Railroad, rode some horses in Page, Arizona, and had some fun. Quick video of that, and we'll do some Q&A.
We were born to explore. From the earliest adventurers to today's modern-day trailblazers. Our curiosity moves us forward into the great unknown, where a vast and beautiful wilderness is waiting to be discovered.
I was chasing down a dream, like you always taught me to.
The creators of National Parks Adventure invite you on an exciting journey into the natural wonders of America.
I'm coming home to the place that I remember, back to the land of my first love.
Join Astronaut John Herrington and Alaska native Ariel Tweedo as they explore the great outdoors. From ancient homelands and hidden trails to the wilds in our own backyard. Take a step off the beaten path into nature's secret wonders and find out what it means to be at home in the wild.
I'm coming home to the place that I remember, back to the land of my first love.
Gilbert Freeman's Into America's Wild, a film for IMAX and Giant Screen Theater.
Morgan Freeman says my name really loud there. Oh boy, sorry about that. You know, Harriet Tubman was an escaped slave and helped lead the Underground Railroad. She actually led a battle for the Union Army, and she was a nurse, I believe. And they attribute this quote to her. You know, back in the 1800s, I think it's very prophetic. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember you have the strength, patience, and passion to reach for the stars and change the world. And I know that if I hadn't met certain people in my life that encouraged me to do something that I didn't necessarily think about doing, and I hadn't made the decisions to do that, we would not be having this conversation. And I'm very blessed that I've had people in my life that cared about me and encouraged me And you might not start off, on the right foot like I did, but sometimes it takes some of us a little bit longer to figure it out. And the idea is to keep plugging along and realize that there's a goal. If you have a goal down the way, you may get there, and work hard at it, but listen to people that encourage you. So that's my story. I'd be more than happy to share, answer any questions you may have about this journey. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So, when you're growing up, there's a lot of people just like you that didn't succeed. What characteristic in you, different than your friends that still are in the bars or still are doing that, what characteristic maybe, that separated you from your friends that you grew up with, same background, same family and everything? What separated you?
Well, some of this, what separated me from the kids I grew up with, some of the kids I grew up with never went to college. One of my best friend when I was 5 years old, still good friends, worked for Coca-Cola for 30 some odd years. He drove a delivery truck for Coca-Cola. At the time when I was going to college, I envied him so much because he had money and I didn't have any money. He had a beautiful truck, he was building stuff. He was making money every day. I didn't have it, and when I was a freshman, sophomore in college, I envied him. I had $50 in my bank account. But I think the fact that there were people that I met in the university that, instructors, professors, my math instructor, she wasn't a PhD, she had a master's, but she was an incredible teacher, an incredibly kind person. And I think that helped me get through because I felt like people cared about me at the university. One of the things I think about being a rock climber is that it was the first time in my life that I did something where I felt I was good at it. And it's the feeling of success from doing something that's difficult leads to that next difficult thing. And I found that I kept having these things in my life that I'd kind of press myself, and I didn't always do the best I could. But I felt that that next thing made me feel that I could do the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. So going through my first tour as a naval aviator, and being assigned with 23 people, or going out on a mission for 9 hours with probably 9 of those folks, everybody, I was the one responsible. And so when you come back after a dark night, flying off the Soviet Union for 9 hours, and you land on a snow-covered runway in Adak, Alaska, and you're taxiing in, everybody smacks you on the back and says, "Good job, Mr. Herrington." You don't realize your feet are shaking on the rudder pedals, from like sewing machine knee when you rock climb. But it's the feeling of satisfaction that comes from that, and it wasn't the money I made, it was the fact that I did something I thought I was trained to do, and I just kept plugging away. I'm not a 4.0 student, I'll admit that. I did well in grad school, but I wasn't a 4.0 student. I know people that were PhDs, first in their class in Naval Academy, top test pilots, PhD, did not get selected by NASA, even though they interviewed. NASA didn't pick them. And what's the reason behind that? I felt that the people that I interviewed with that were successful in that were people who worked well with others. They were kind, they were nice, they were conscientious, and they got along well with each other. And then my class, certainly, I felt that way with pretty much everybody in that class. It was a big class. Maybe, I don't know, working, my last interview question was, why should we hire you? How are you different than anybody else that's come through this office, to be interviewed? And I said, well, I'm a fixed wing engineering test pilot. I did well in my squadrons. I have a master's degree. Pretty much anybody else that walked through that door essentially had that same background on the military side of the house. My grandpa had a 3rd grade education. He was a diesel mechanic. My dad has a PhD in experience. He's taught me how to work on cars, and I rebuild Volkswagens. I rebuild a big deck. I said, I like to tinker. I'm a tinkerer. He said, I think the space station, ultimate construction program, I would love to turn the wrench in space. He said, okay, thank you. And I walked out of that thinking that was the stupidest answer I could have ever given. And they put me in a Mylar ball, a claustrophobia test. And it's supposed to be a flight test of this Mylar ball, this escape thing on the space shuttle. And I sat there thinking, stupid answer. A few months later, I've been selected as an astronaut. I'm in a class, and one of the guys from Missions and Operations, MOD, comes in and says, how many folks work in your cars? Well, space station is a construction program. I don't want to teach you how to turn a wrench in space. And so I know calculus, I know modern algebra and advanced calculus, but I never used that in my career. It was about being analytic and being a problem solver and working well with others. So I don't know if that's what set me apart or not, having that curiosity and that kind of stick-to-itness, I think. Yeah. I've never been asked that question before. That's good. Oh, good answer. All right, and answer. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
In all the places you've been, what's been the hardest part of telling your story?
In all the places I've been, the hardest part about telling my story, first few times I told the story, people said, "Why didn't you tell me you got kicked out of school?" I did. You know, and okay, well, what's the story beyond that? And initially, that was when people said, "You know what? Don't tell that story." And I said, "Well, it's a story of me." And if I don't tell a story, then I'm doing myself a disservice, because you have to overcome whatever, you know, what I didn't have at the time. I figured it out later on, I think. That was the most difficult part early on. Another difficult part was when I first got selected as an astronaut. Somebody said, "Man, a friend of mine said, man, I wish I was Indian." Excuse me? So what? So you know, what? He said, "Yeah, if I can be an astronaut too." Seriously? So that's the only thing I've ever done in my career that you think makes me qualified, that I got selected for that reason, and nothing else matters. And if everything I've done in my career, and that's the only reason I was selected, then I don't deserve to be there. You know, I deserve to be there because of all the things I've done in my career. Oh, and I'm Indian. Yeah, that says something for my ancestors. I'm proud. My ancestors would be proud of me for doing that. I was shocked at that comment. And I guarantee you that pretty much every person of color in the office, every female in the office, lived with this notion that people looked at them and think that's the reason you're there. So it made us work that much harder to not give them the ammunition to you know, oh, that's why, you know, say they didn't do very good, you know, and that made us all work that much harder. So that's probably the hardest part right there. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us the Marine story?
The Marine story. Officer Candidate School. We had, you know, all these drill instructors. Aviation Officer Candidate School is 14 weeks long. You go in, you go from being a college graduate to being really nothing. You know, learning to be a team player. And so they're always testing you. They're always asking you questions, and at the least expected time you get hammered by a Marine drill instructor. I'm marching into chow. You're doing this. You got a tray. Sir 584 this table. Ready, seats. Adjust. Bow heads. Pray. Eat at will. About the time I'm praying, I hear Gunnery Sergeant Crenshaw, United States Marine Corps, over on the other side of the chow hall. "Boy, what you praying, boy?" Dear God, don't let him be talking to me. And I said, "Boy, what you praying, boy?" And so I stood up. "Sir, this candidate prayed, Gunnery Sergeant Crenshaw, United States Marine Corps, would live long and prosper." I'm not a Trekkie. I'm not a Star Trek fan. But where that came from at that moment, I was proud of myself.
That's good.
And he goes, "Oh, sit back down." Because if I said something like, "I don't know," you know, that's, you know, as a Marine, you know, that's not good. Deep, huge appreciation for the Marines that got us through that. Very much. We have a Facebook page. It's a lot of fun. So thank you for your service too. Anybody else? Thank you so much. Amanda, congratulations. I'm honored to be able to come here and present this to you. And Joanne, thank you for being here as well to do this. Thank you. So Stephen, thank you very much for having us here.